The storm hit Chicago without warning on a Tuesday evening in late October. The kind of storm that turned the sky black at 5 in the afternoon, that sent sheets of rain sideways across the streets, that made even the toughest Midwesterners run for cover. Thunder rolled across Lake Michigan like drums of war, and lightning split the sky with violent beauty. Daniel Kim sat in his penthouse office on the 75th floor of the Drake Tower, watching the storm through floor-to-ceiling windows. At 45 years old, he was a founder and CEO of Nexus Global, a tech company worth $8 billion. His office was all glass and steel and expensive art, the kind of space that appeared in business magazines with captions about success and vision and the American dream. But tonight, Daniel wasn't thinking about success. He was thinking about the quarterly report spread across his desk, about the shareholders breathing down his neck, about the Tokyo deal that was falling apart, about his daughter's voice on the phone last week asking why he'd missed her birthday again. He was thinking about how empty this office felt, how cold, how much it resembled a very expensive prison. His phone buzzed. The front desk. He answered with practiced efficiency. "Mr. Kim, there's a delivery for you. Should I send them up?" Daniel glanced at his watch. 6:30. He hadn't ordered anything. "What kind of delivery?" "Dinner, sir, from Chen's Palace. The gentleman says you placed an order an hour ago." Daniel frowned. He hadn't ordered dinner. Then he remembered his assistant mentioning something about ordering food before she left for the day, something about him needing to eat because he'd been in meetings since 7 that morning and hadn't stopped for lunch. "Send him up," Daniel said, feeling a flash of irritation. He'd planned to work through dinner. He always worked through dinner. 5 minutes later, there was a knock on his office door. Daniel called for them to enter, not looking up from his laptop screen. He heard the door open, heard footsteps on the polished floor, heard the rustle of a plastic bag. "Just leave it on the table," Daniel said, still typing, still not looking up. "Thanks." Silence. No footsteps leaving. Just silence and the sound of heavy breathing, the kind that comes after running or crying or both. Daniel looked up, irritation shifting to concern. The delivery man stood in the middle of his office, dripping water onto the expensive marble floor, holding a plastic bag of food in trembling hands. He was young, maybe 25, wearing a bright red jacket with a delivery app logo plastered across the back. His hair was plastered to his forehead, his shoes squelched with water. His face was streaked with rain, and something else. Tears. The young man was crying, standing there in Daniel's pristine office, soaking wet and shaking, tears running down his face as he stared at the bag of food in his hands like it was the heaviest thing he'd ever carried. Daniel stood slowly, his annoyance evaporating instantly. "Hey," he said gently, "are you okay?" The delivery man looked up, startled, as if he'd forgotten where he was. His eyes were red and swollen, his face pale beneath his olive skin. He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Instead, more tears fell, silent and devastating. "I'm sorry," the young man finally whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. I just need a minute. I'll leave. I'm sorry." He turned toward the door, but something about the way he moved, like a man on the edge of collapse, made Daniel act without thinking. He crossed the room quickly and gently took the food bag from the delivery man's hands. "Wait," Daniel said. "Please, sit down for a minute." The young man shook his head. "I can't. I have 14 more deliveries. I'm already behind. I've been behind all day. I can't afford to lose this job. I can't." His voice cracked completely, and he covered his face with his hands, shoulders shaking. Daniel guided him to the leather couch by the window, not caring about the water, soaking into the expensive upholstery. The young man collapsed onto it like his legs had given out, and Daniel sat beside him, this stranger who was falling apart in his office while the storm raged outside. "I'm Daniel," he said quietly. "What's your name?" "Marcus." The young man said through his hands. "Marcus Rivera." "Okay, Marcus. Take your time. Breathe. You're safe here." They sat in silence while Marcus struggled to compose himself. Daniel didn't rush him, didn't check his watch, didn't think about the emails piling up or the reports waiting. He just sat there, being present in a way he hadn't been present for anything in years. Finally, Marcus lowered his hands. His eyes met Daniel's, and in them, Daniel saw a depth of exhaustion and despair that made his chest ache. "My daughter," Marcus whispered. "She's in the hospital. St. Catherine's. She's 4 years old, and she has leukemia, and the treatment isn't covered by insurance because I don't have insurance because this delivery job doesn't give insurance, and I've been working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, trying to save money for her treatment. But it's not enough. It's never enough." The words tumbled out in a rush, as if a dam had broken. "The doctors say she needs a specific treatment that costs $40,000, and I have $3,000 saved, and I don't know what to do. I don't know how to save her. I'm her father, and I can't save her." His voice broke on the last word, and Daniel felt something crack open inside his own chest. A door he kept locked for so long he'd forgotten existed. A memory of being young and scared and desperate. "Today's her birthday," Marcus continued, wiping his face with shaking hands. "She's 4 years old today, and I'm here, delivering food in the rain, instead of being with her, because I need the money, because every delivery matters, because $40,000 might as well be $40 million when you're making $12 an hour plus tips." He laughed bitterly, a sound devoid of humor. "And the worst part? She doesn't blame me. When I called her from the hospital this morning to say happy birthday, you know what she said? She said, 'It's okay, Daddy. I understand. You're working to make me better.' She's 4 years old, and she's comforting me." Marcus buried his face in his hands again, and Daniel sat there, frozen by the weight of what he'd just heard. This man, this stranger, was living through a parent's worst nightmare, working himself to death trying to save his daughter, spending her birthday making deliveries in a storm, because $40,000 stood between his child and survival. Daniel thought about his own daughter, Sophia, 15 years old, healthy, safe, privileged. He thought about how he'd missed her birthday last week because of work, how she'd called and he'd promised to make it up to her, and probably wouldn't because something else would come up. Something always came up. He thought about the watch on his wrist, worth $35,000, more than Marcus needed to save his daughter's life. He thought about the car in his private parking spot, worth $150,000, the apartment he barely lived in, the vacations he never took, the money accumulating accounts he rarely checked because there was always more money, always more success, always more of everything except time and presence and purpose. Daniel pulled out his phone. Marcus didn't notice, still lost in his grief and exhaustion. Daniel opened his banking app and made a transfer. Then he closed his laptop, gathered his coat, and stood. "Marcus," he said gently, "look at me." Marcus looked up, his face a mask of misery and embarrassment. "I'm sorry," he said again. "I shouldn't have broken down like that. You don't need my problems. I'll go. I'll finish my deliveries. I'm sorry for wasting your time." "You didn't waste my time," Daniel said firmly. "And you're not going back out in that storm. You're going to the hospital to be with your daughter on her birthday." Marcus shook his head. "I can't afford to lose this job. These deliveries are handled," Daniel interrupted. "I'm calling your dispatch right now to tell them you're done for night. Family emergency. They won't penalize you. But the money—" "Check your phone," Daniel said quietly. Marcus frowned, confused, but pulled out his cracked phone screen. He opened his banking app, and Daniel watched his face transform from confusion to disbelief to shock. The color drained from Marcus's cheeks, and his hands started shaking so badly he almost dropped the phone. "What? How? This can't be real," Marcus whispered, staring at the screen. "This says $50,000. This can't be right. This has to be a mistake." "It's not a mistake," Daniel said. "It's for your daughter's treatment, and whatever else you need. Medicine, recovery, time off work to be with her. Whatever it takes." Marcus looked up at him with eyes so full of shock and gratitude and disbelief that Daniel had to look away. Why? Marcus breathed. You don't know me. You don't know my daughter. Why would you do this? Daniel was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to answer, thinking about the question he'd been asking himself for years without realizing it. Because I can, he said finally. Because you shouldn't have to choose between being with your daughter on her birthday and paying for her to live. Because somewhere along the way, I forgot what money is actually for. It's not for accumulating. It's not for measuring success. It's for moments like this. For helping. For making sure a little girl gets to grow up with her father. Daniel did something he hadn't done in 15 years. He canceled his evening, cleared his schedule, and went with Marcus to St. Catherine's Hospital. They rode together in Daniel's car, Marcus still in shock, clutching his phone like a lifeline, checking the bank app every few minutes as if expecting the money to disappear. The hospital was old but clean, the kind of place that survived on dedication rather than money. They walked through corridors painted in cheerful colors that tried and failed to hide the sadness that lived in these walls. Marcus led the way with nervous energy, moving faster with every step, until he was almost running toward the pediatric oncology ward. Room 412. Marcus pushed open the door, and Daniel hung back, feeling suddenly intrusive. This was a private moment, a sacred moment. He shouldn't be here. But Marcus turned back and gestured for him to enter. Please, he said, I want you to meet her. I want her to meet the man who saved her life. Inside the small room, a little girl lay in a hospital bed that looked far too big for a tiny frame. She had a pink scarf wrapped around her head where chemotherapy had taken her hair, for lines ran from her thin arms. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, but when she saw her father, her entire face lit up with a smile so bright, so pure, that Daniel felt his throat close up. Daddy, she exclaimed, her voice weak but joyful. You came. I thought you had to work. Marcus rushed to her bedside, gathering her carefully in his arms, crying openly now. Happy birthday, baby girl. I'm so sorry I wasn't here earlier. I'm so sorry. It's okay, Daddy, she said, patting his cheek with a small hand. You're here now. That's what matters. Her eyes found Daniel standing awkwardly by the door. Who's that? She asked with child's innocent curiosity. Marcus pulled back, wiping his eyes. This is Mr. Kim. He's an angel, Mia. He's the reason Daddy can be here with you now. The reason you're going to get better. Mia studied Daniel with serious eyes that seemed far too old for a 4-year-old. Then she smiled and waved. Hi, Mr. Kim. Thank you for bringing my daddy. That's the best birthday present ever. Daniel stepped closer, his heart breaking and healing simultaneously. Hi, Mia. Happy birthday. And please call me Daniel. A nurse came in, a tired-looking woman in her 50s with kind eyes. She checked Mia's vitals, adjusted her for, and chatted with her about the birthday cake they'd have later. When she was done, Marcus pulled her aside, and Daniel watched as Marcus explained about the money, about the treatment, about everything changing in the span of an hour. The nurse's eyes widened, and she looked at Daniel with an expression he couldn't quite read. Gratitude, yes, but also something else. Recognition, maybe. A reminder that miracles sometimes came in the form of strangers with the power to help and a heart to care. I'll talk to Dr. Morrison right away, the nurse said. We can start the treatment tomorrow. Mia's going to have a fighting chance now. A real chance. After she left, Daniel sat with Marcus and Mia for the next 2 hours. He watched Marcus read to his daughter from a worn picture book. He watched them laugh over silly voices and funny faces. He watched Mia fight to keep her eyes open, try and stay awake because her daddy was here, try and make the moment last forever. When Mia finally fell asleep, Marcus carefully laid her back on the pillows and pulled the blanket up to her chin. He kissed her forehead gently, and Daniel saw a love so pure, so absolute, that it made everything else in life seem trivial. Outside in the hallway, Marcus turned to Daniel with tears still fresh in his eyes. I don't know how to thank you, he said. I don't have words big enough. You gave me my daughter's life. You gave me hope when I had none left. How do I even begin to repay that? Daniel shook his head. You don't repay it. You just love her. You be there for her. You be the father she deserves. And that's all the thanks I need. But why? Marcus asked again. I need to understand. People don't do things like this. Not in the real world. Not without wanting something in return. Daniel leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted, not physically tired, but emotionally drained in a way that felt strangely cleansing. 15 years ago, Daniel said quietly, I was you. Not exactly the same situation, but close enough. I was 29 years old with a startup company that was failing. I had investors pulling out, employees I couldn't pay, a wife who was pregnant with our daughter, and about $1,000 in the bank. He paused. The memory clear as yesterday. I was sitting in a coffee shop, trying to figure out how to tell my wife we were going to lose everything. I was on my laptop, looking at bankruptcy lawyers, trying not to cry in public. And this old man at the next table, someone I'd never seen before, asked if I was okay. Daniel smiled at the memory. I told him everything. Just poured it all out to this stranger, because I had no one else to tell. And when I finished, he wrote me a check for $50,000. Said it was an investment. No contract. No paperwork. Just a check and a handshake and a piece of advice. What did he say? Marcus asked. He said, when you make it, and you will make it, remember this feeling. Remember what it's like to need help. And when you see someone else in that position, someone who just needs a chance, you help them. That's how we build a better world. One chance at a time. Daniel's eyes were distant, seeing the past. I built Nexus Global with that money. Turned $50,000 into $8 billion over 15 years. But somewhere along the way, I forgot about that old man. I forgot his advice. I forgot what it felt like to be desperate. I got rich and comfortable and busy, and I stopped seeing people, really seeing them. He looked at Marcus directly. You reminded me, standing in my office, crying, breaking down because you're trying to save your daughter. You reminded me what that old man taught me. That money is just paper unless you use it to help people. That success means nothing if you forget where you came from. That the point of making it isn't to build bigger walls around yourself. It's to reach back and pull others up. Marcus wiped his eyes. What was his name? The old man who helped you. Henry Morrison. Daniel said, he died 5 years ago. I went to his funeral. I tried to pay him back 100 times, but he always refused. He'd just smile and say, pay it forward, not back. So that's what I'm doing. Finally, 15 years late, but I'm doing it. The next morning, Daniel called an emergency board meeting at Nexus Global. His executives filed into the conference room, confused and curious about the sudden summons. Daniel stood at the head of the table, and for the first time in years, he felt truly awake, truly alive. I'm making some changes, he announced without preamble. Effective immediately, Nexus Global is establishing a full healthcare program for all employees and contractors. That includes delivery drivers, cleaning staff, anyone who works for us or with us. Full coverage. No exceptions. His CFO started to protest. Daniel, the cost. I don't care about the cost, Daniel interrupted calmly. We're an $8 billion company. We can afford to make sure the people who work for us don't have to choose between medical care and eating. If our business model can't support taking care of our people, then we need a different business model. He pulled up a presentation on the screen behind him. Second, we're launching the Morrison Foundation, named after someone who changed my life. It will provide emergency grants to families dealing with medical crises. No applications, no bureaucracy, just help when people need it most. For the next hour, Daniel outlined his vision, programs for employees' children, scholarships, mental health support, paid family leave, things that should have been standard but weren't because corporations had decided profit mattered more than people. His board was skeptical. Some were openly hostile. But Daniel was a majority shareholder, and more than that, he was done compromising, done putting money before humanity, done being the kind of CEO who measured success only in quarterly earnings. This company was built on one person's kindness, Daniel said quietly. On an old man who saw potential in a desperate kid and took a chance. If we can't extend that same kindness to others, then what's the point of any of this? The programs launched within a week. The response was overwhelming. Employees cried in gratitude. Local news picked up the story. Other companies started asking questions, wondering if they too could implement similar programs. Daniel visited Marcus and Mia several times during Mia's treatment. He watched her grow stronger, saw color return to her cheeks, witnessed a miracle of modern medicine combined with hope and love and financial security. The treatment worked. Slowly, carefully, Mia improved. 3 months later, Mia was declared in remission. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. She'd need monitoring, regular checkups, but she was going to live. She was going to grow up. Daniel was there the day they left the hospital. He watched Marcus carry his daughter out into the sunshine, both of them squinting at the brightness after so many weeks under fluorescent lights. Mia wore a pink hat covered in butterflies, and she waved at everyone they passed like a princess in a parade. "Bye, hospital," she called out. "Thank you for making me better." Marcus had accepted Daniel's offer to work directly for Nexus Global in their new community outreach division. No more 18-hour days. No more deliveries in the rain. Just meaningful work helping other families like his, making sure no parent had to make the impossible choices he'd faced. "I still can't believe this is real," Marcus said, setting Mia down so she could walk, holding her hand tightly. "Some days I wake up and think I'm going to be back in that delivery uniform, racing against the clock, drowning in fear." "It's real," Daniel assured him. "You earned this. You fought for your daughter. You never gave up. That strength, that love, that's what makes you perfect for this job. You understand what these families are going through, because you lived it." Mia tugged on Daniel's hand. "Mr. Daniel, can I tell you a secret?" Daniel crouched down to her level. "Of course." She leaned close and whispered loudly, "You're my favorite superhero, even more than Spider-Man." Daniel laughed, feeling something warm expand in his chest. "That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me, Mia." "Will you come to my next birthday party?" she asked hopefully. "When I'm 5, Daddy says we can have a real party now, with cake and balloons and everything." "I wouldn't miss it for the world," Daniel promised, and he meant it. 1 year later, Daniel stood on the stage at a charity gala, but this time he wasn't the guest of honor. Marcus was. The Morrison Foundation was honoring him as their first community champion for the work he'd done helping families navigate medical crises. Daniel watched from the audience as Marcus told his story, how he'd been at rock bottom, crying in a billionaire's office, certain he'd lost everything that mattered, how one act of kindness had saved his daughter's life and given him purpose beyond survival. "But the thing is," Marcus said from the podium, his voice steady and strong, "Daniel didn't just save Mia. He saved me too. He reminded me that there are good people in this world, that sometimes when you're drowning, someone throws you a life preserver, and then it becomes your job to keep that life preserver nearby for the next person who's drowning." The audience applauded, but Marcus wasn't finished. "Through the Morrison Foundation, we've helped 217 families this year. 217 children got the treatment they needed. 217 parents didn't have to choose between being present and providing. And every single one of those families is someone's miracle, just like Daniel was mine." After the speech, Daniel found Marcus in the hallway. Mia was there too, healthy and vibrant, her hair grown back in dark curls, wearing a purple dress she'd picked out herself. She was explaining very seriously to anyone who'd listen that she was going to be a doctor when she grew up, so she could help kids like she'd been helped. "You did good up there," Daniel said, clasping Marcus's shoulder. "I meant every word," Marcus replied. "You changed everything, Daniel. Not just for me and Mia, but for hundreds of families. You started something that's bigger than any of us." Daniel shook his head. "We started something, you and me, and every person we've helped who's now helping someone else. That's how change happens. One person reaching out to another. One moment of choosing to see someone instead of walking past." His phone buzzed. A text from Sophia, his daughter. She was volunteering at the foundation office, working with families, doing what teenagers did when they saw their parents actually living out values instead of just talking about them. Dad, there's a woman here who needs help. Her son has a heart condition. Can you come down? Daniel showed the text of Marcus. Duty calls. Let's go, Marcus said immediately. They walked out together, Mia between them, holding both their hands and chattering about school and her friends and the science project she was working on about how medicine helped people. She was going to live. She was going to grow up, go to college, become whatever she wanted to be, all because her father had broken down in a stranger's office. And that stranger had remembered what it meant to be human. At the foundation office, a woman sat in the waiting area, her face etched with the same desperation Daniel had seen in Marcus a year ago, the same fear, the same exhaustion. Her son, maybe 7 years old, sat beside her, trying to be brave. Daniel and Marcus approached together. The woman looked up, hope and desperation warring in her eyes. Hi, Daniel said gently, sitting down beside her. I'm Daniel. This is Marcus. We're here to help. Tell us what you need. 2 years after that rainy night, Daniel sat in his office, but it looked different now. The cold minimalism was gone, replaced with photos of families helped by the foundation. Children's artwork covered one wall. Thank you drawings from kids who were alive because someone had cared enough to help. On his desk sat a photo of Mia on her 6th birthday, blowing out candles, Marcus beside her, both beaming. Next, there was a photo of Henry Morrison, the old man who'd started this chain of kindness 15 years ago with a check and some wisdom. Daniel's business partners had predicted the company would suffer with all his new socialist policies, as they called them. They'd been spectacularly wrong. Employee retention was at an all-time high. Productivity had increased. Nexus Global had attracted the best talent in the industry because word got around about a company that actually cared about its people. But more than that, Daniel had built something that mattered, not just a successful company, but a legacy of kindness, a model for how businesses could profit without sacrificing humanity. Proof that taking care of people wasn't just the right thing to do. It was good business. His daughter Sophia came into the office, now 17 and passionately involved with the foundation. Dad, we just hit 500 families helped. 500. Daniel smiled. Henry would be proud. I think he'd be amazed, Sophia said, sitting on his desk the way she used to when she was little. You know what's crazy? If you'd driven past Marcus that night, none of this would exist. 500 families would be drowning, all because you stopped. No, Daniel corrected gently. All because Henry stopped for me 15 years ago. All because he believed that kindness creates more kindness, that helping one person creates a ripple that spreads farther than we can imagine. He looked at the wall of photos, at all those smiling faces, those saved lives, those second chances. We don't always know the impact of our choices, he continued. We don't always see the full picture. But every time we choose to see someone, really see them, to stop when everyone else walks past, to help when it would be easy to look away, we're creating ripples. Some small, some huge, but all of them matter. Sophia hugged him. I'm proud of you, Dad, for remembering what matters. That night, Daniel left work at a reasonable hour, something that still felt strange but increasingly right. He drove past the Drake Tower, past a place where everything had changed because a delivery man cried in his office and reminded him what it meant to be human. The city lights reflected off the rain-slicked streets, and Daniel thought about Marcus, home with Mia, helping with homework, being present for the small moments that add up to a life. He thought about Henry Morrison, whose kindness had rippled through 15 years and hundreds of lives. He thought about all the people out there right now who were one act of kindness away from a completely different future. And he thought about the choice we all face every single day, to see or to look away, to help or to walk past, to remember our humanity or to forget it in the pursuit of whatever we think will make us happy. Real happiness Daniel had learned wasn't in the accumulation. It was in the connection, in the helping, in the moments when you reach across the divide between human beings and say, I see you. I care. Let me help. Sometimes the person who needs saving saves you right back. They remind you who you used to be, who you're meant to be, who you can become when you remember that success without compassion is just decorated emptiness, that wealth without generosity is just a bigger cage, that the true measure of a life isn't what you accumulate, but what you give away and who you become in the giving. The greatest fortunes are built not in bank accounts, but in the hearts of those we help, and the ripples of kindness spread farther than any legacy of wealth ever could. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video. It helps us share more beautiful stories like this one. Kindly drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. I like to know what part of the world engages with my story. Oh, also, don't forget to subscribe to my channel Deep Cut Stories for more emotional stories about love, kindness, and fate that'll touch your heart deeply. Thank you for watching.